out of business years ago. And that's how he made so much money. Because he was interacting with a lot of radio personalities. Radio personalities was not up under him.
Oh, that's dope.
So when Stephen A. Smith endorses something, he's endorsing it.
Alright. And that's the goal.
If I make an extra 1,000 on the side.
20 seconds, Bernie.
Do that.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Experience Hockey Talk, serious hockey talk for serious hockey fans. I'm Michael Lindemann. Bernie is joining us on the phone, and real quick, you can listen to us on the WBGR Sports Network at WBGRsports.com, plus also watch us on Facebook Live on the TXHT Facebook page and the WBGR Sports Network Facebook page. And also, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, we are giving away weekend passes to the CSA show, which is taking place on October 13th through 15th. You got Jesse Hall, Les Averman, and Adam Banks from the Mighty Ducks movies, plus Alex Ovechkin, and now the recently announced Hockey Hall of Famers Marcel Dion, Brian Trottier, and Ed Jacquemin. So email Donald at blake4av@aol.com for a chance to win 2 weekend passes to the CSA show next month. Bernie, can you hear me, buddy?
How are you doing, my friend? I am out here at Baker Park in the wonderful city of Frederick, Maryland today. We got the 16th annual Buddy Walk for Down syndrome, and as we all know, hockey-wise, Barry Trotz and his son Nolan, as well as Daryl Sutter and his son, both are big advocates for with Down syndrome, being personally affected by it. If you're in the Frederick area, I'm out here, my cap's here. Come on up, say hi to me. I'm representing Team Cupcake with all the beautiful cupcakes that Sean and Michelle Chisholm have made out with their daughter Juliana, who is also has Down syndrome, but you can't tell. She's got a bright smile and everything, and we're ready to do some previews today, starting with the Western Conference. But I want a quick few news and notes before we get on to that. There were a couple more signings. Everyone's starting to realize, oh darn, training camp starts. I need to get in camp. So David Pastrnak, 6 years, $40 million. That's a nice chunk of change for the young right winger from the Czech Republic. Then you got Marcus Foligno finally came to terms with the Minnesota Wild. He was part of that big Buffalo, Minnesota trade in the offseason. 4 years, I think $11 million. And then you had David Siverson of the Devils, 6 years, $25 million. So everyone's starting to cash in. And I think we'll be talking about Brian Little a little later on when we talk about the Jets. 6 years, $31 million. So, Michael, I think we're in the wrong business here. These guys get paid $5-6 million a year.
Yeah, well, give us about 50 years, we'll finally get there. So, but as you mentioned, we are doing the Western Conference preview this weekend. Next weekend, we'll be doing the Eastern Conference preview minus the Washington Capitals, which we will be doing on September 30th because season starts on October 4th. And real quick, Bernie, looking at the Central Division, we got to start right off at the top. The Chicago Blackhawks, last season, they were 50-23-9 with 109 points. They're first in the Central Division. However, got swept and only scored 3 goals in the entire playoffs, losing to the Nashville Predators. Key additions for them was left winger Brandon Saad and Patrick Sharp, defenseman Connor Murphy, and goalie Anton Forsberg. Key departures was left winger Artemi Panarin, Nicholas Halmerson, defenseman, center Marcus Kruger, defenseman Trevor Van Riemsdyk, defenseman Johnny Oduya, and goalie Scott Darling, and as well as right winger Marian Hossa. Now, some notes. I'll let you go with some notes from yourself first before I go into mine. What are your thoughts on Chicago so far?
Well, Chicago is probably the biggest surprise of the playoffs last year to get ushered out 4 games by the Nashville Predators with only scoring 3 goals. And you got all that firepower to have lifted Lord Stanley's Holy Grail for multiple times, like a Jonathan Toews, like a Patrick Kane, to have the wherewithal, like Stan Bowman always does, to realize where he's looking long-term cap-wise, sending a premier talent like Artemi Panarin to the Columbus Blue Jackets, but getting back Brandon Saad, who is the ripe old age of 24. Yet he's done so much in his short career high in goals last year, 31. I think what they're banking on is, like a lot of these teams, it's going to be a growing theme when we go through all 31 teams at one point or another. Youth is going to have to step up bigger this year than ever before. They're looking at Alex Brickett and one of the draft picks they had recently to possibly maybe fill a slot there. Nick Schmaltz is going to be a year older. The defense, you still have your Duncan Keith and your Britt Seabrook, but the changes there are glaring too. No Chalmerson anymore, no Oduya. You got Roosevelt back, like you have Cody Franson on a PTO, and then you got a couple of these young kids too. It's going to be a very interesting year in Chicago, and it's going to be a fight because until last year when the Metro Division was getting all the headlines before, it was the division of death was the Central Division.
Yeah, and definitely after a very disappointing playoffs, saw the Blackhawks get swept in the first round, as I mentioned earlier. They only scored 3 goals. Tom Wilson scored 3 goals in the playoffs, and 2 of them were game-winning goals. So, just to throw that out there, their brass shook things up and really rocked this team to their core. They even fired assistant coach Mike Kitchen, who ran the power play. So the biggest question is, how will the not the Coyotes, I'm wearing Coyotes jersey. Thank you, Shaggy, for the comment on my jersey. Hopefully the Coyotes see my tweet in a minute. But, how will the Blackhawks respond this season? It was said that, Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane were really upset when Brandon Saad was traded to Columbus. Now he's back, but Panarin is now in Columbus, which, now people are saying that, hey, Patrick Kane couldn't do much unless he did have Artemi Panarin. So it's going to be very interesting to see how them respond to how the critics are stating, oh, Brandon Saad, now you have him back. You better do something with him. Panarin's gone. How will Kane respond? So it's that weird dynamic when you look at that, but at the same time you're bringing back a veteran like a Patrick Sharp, which could be potentially good or bad for the team. Yeah. Because a lot of people, if you remember, if you watch that Road to the Winter Classic with the Capitals and Blackhawks, you actually noticed that there was some dissension within some of the Blackhawks on the bench with Patrick Sharp because he was getting hard on himself and they didn't like it. So maybe the time away from Chicago, being in Dallas for the last 2 seasons, will help Patrick Sharp and, give him that fresh set of eyes coming in back into Chicago. So
also with him being injured last year, it's going to give him a chance to redeem himself. I mean, he signed an $800,000 contract, I think, so low-end contract, and someone that knows the Blackhawk culture. I could see him place it in there with Anisimov and Kane if they don't go with one of the young kids, either Rick Cat, like we talked about, or maybe a Schmaltz or one of those young up-and-coming wings they have. So it's going to be definitely an interesting turnover there in Chicago.
And then, of course, another thing, moving on to the next team, the Colorado Avalanche. Last season, they were 22-56-4 with 48 points. They were last in the division. Key additions for them is left winger Colin Wilson, right winger Nail Yakupov, and goaltender Jonathan Bernier. Their key departures are defenseman Francois Boschman, center Mikhail Grigorenko, and goalie Calvin Picard. Now, let's talk about this dumpster fire real quick, shall we? After a very dismal 2016-17 season, which Patrick Waugh, 6 weeks before training camp, went, no, I'm not wanting anything to do with this team, which is the worst in the salary cap era. One would think that the Colorado Avalanche would go into a full-blown rebuild, but general manager Joe Sakic did nothing to help this team. the Avalanche faithful are going to be in for a very painful 2017-18 season. One has to wonder, how many more mistakes does Joe Sakic have to make before he is relieved of his duties as the general manager of the Colorado Avalanche?
Well, you got to think he's got a longer leash than most just because of what he's done for that city of Denver.
I think that's part of the problem.
Well, I think a full training camp with Jared Bednar as the coach, getting his systems in place. You still got a lot of young talent melting in there this year, like Tyson Jost and Alex Kerfoot just getting signed from college. You got Mikko Rantanen, who showed flashes his rookie year. He's only 20. It's a youth movement there for sure. And I mean, you got to think Nate McKinnon's still very young. Getting that core together, I mean, but you have all the turmoil with the Matt Duchene situation. Landeskog's name's been thrown out in trade rumors. I mean, in his early to mid-20s, and he's captaining your team. I mean, you have to captain your team get thrown out in trade rumors. You can't keep this ship straight, especially when you're losing 7 out of 8, 10 out of 12, 15 out of 18. It's just steamrolls, like, pardon the pun, an avalanche out there in Denver. So, but you got young guys like Barry. They need Simeon and Varlamov. That's the big key. 6-17 last year isn't going to cut it. You know, they need to find the Varlamov from a couple years ago who was invested in this conversation.
Well, I think that's why they signed Jonathan Bernier, because they know Jonathan Bernier, while he really is a career backup, you know, if he needs to start a string of games, the guy can start a string of games. And he can put that pressure on Semyon Varlamov. So, right. You know, at least the one positive thing I can say about the Colorado Avalanche this year is I'm happy that they went back to their original look for their jerseys. So, I am pretty happy about that. But definitely, though, Patrick Waugh looked like a genius when he left the team 6 weeks before training camp last season, because he knew that they were going to be in for a mess this past season, and he sees it coming up. And I think a big reason is that Patrick Waugh wants to have a certain team, and I don't think Joe Sakic has that same vision as Patrick Waugh, and Patrick Waugh was a very successful coach in junior hockey. So,
as well as his first year with the Avalanche.
Yeah, as well as his first year with the Avalanche. So it's like that, when you look at that in a big perspective, you have to ask yourself, maybe there's more to what Patrick Waugh knows than what we know, and we're starting to see the underbelly of it really showing. Yeah,
and speaking of disappointing seasons, I think our next team in the Deep South had a season that a lot of people had to just sit down, or they were falling down, seeing how far this team fell.
Yeah, and that is the Dallas Stars. Last season, they were 34, 37, and 11 with 79 points, and they were 6th in the Central Division. Their key additions is center Martin Hansel, right winger Alexander Radulov, defenseman Mark Mathot, and goalie Ben Bishop. Their key departures is center Cody Eakin, left winger Patrick Sharp, right winger Alice Hemsky, and goalie Antti Niemi. And as you just mentioned, a disappointing season which saw them drop 30 standing points. The Dallas Stars let go coach Lindy Ruff and brought back Ken Hitchcock. Big question on this, will this work? We'll see, but Dallas did get some upgrades in Mark Mathot and Ben Bishop. So they're definitely getting a lot better goaltending, and they just really did do a good upgrade on their defense as well.
Well, that's been the question all along, Michael, with Dallas' goaltending. I mean, Niemi and Lettinen was a two-headed monster. They thought we were going to be able to split the games and be able to give everyone, keep each one fresh so one of them could take the reins in the playoffs. The problem was neither one of them showed any sort of consistency. Bringing in a Ben Bishop, who has taken a team to the Eastern Conference Finals, taking a team to the finals, until he got hurt against the Blackhawks. But and then you bring in a Mark Mathot, which is a really heady move. I mean, because he played with Erik Karlsson in Ottawa, and they see a lot in John Klingberg that Ottawa sees in Erik Karlsson, a young, hungry defenseman that's ready to take that next step offensively. He came on the team 2 years ago like a juggernaut. And the problem the team doesn't have is scoring. They got plenty of it, and of course, like you mentioned, they added a Mark Hansel down the middle. You add a Alexander Radulov on the wing. If Sagan and all those guys stay healthy, Jamie Benn stays healthy, I mean, this team's going to be right back into the mix and making that Central Division a very muddy and very intense division again.
Yeah, and then moving on to a team who stayed consistent is the Minnesota Wild. Minnesota was 49-25-8 with 106 points, and they were second in the Central Division. Key additions was left winger Marcus Foligno, right winger Tyler Ennis, and defenseman Kyle Quincy. Key departures was center Martin Hansel, who just we mentioned went to Dallas, right winger Jason Pominville, defenseman Marco Scandella, center Eric Halla, and goaltender Darcy Kumper. Now, they had a great regular season, but a very disappointing playoff performance last season. The Minnesota Wild are looking to redeem themselves this season. With the loss of key veterans and knowledge that they had a horrible run going into the playoffs, the Wild will want to look at being consistent this season and keep calm and not let the locker room get fractured like the way it did last season. But one question I have to ask you, Bernie, is this. Is Bruce Boudreau a playoff coach?
Yes, he is, and I think he's learning more and more, and now having a defense that he had last year, even though you lose to Scandella, you still have all those pieces in place that you can still make a big run, and you added all the additions. Some of the key additions might be the rookies that are coming on board, like the Erickson X. They hope he might be able to take that third center position. That's why they let Martin Hansel and even Eric Halla go. But you also have, Luke Kunin could be another guy, a recent draft choice that could pop in. We've always talked about Minnesota having those 5 blue chip prospects on the horizon. But everyone wants to see what they are going to do this year. And to your point about the locker room and everything, bringing in guys on PTOs like a Ryan Malone and a Daniel Winnick, even if they don't make the team, they've been a part of winning teams and winning cultures that could personify into those young players and the players that are still looking over the hump. The one big thing that just flared up this past week, Zach Parise, when he's healthy and he's on the ice, there's not a better player on the Minnesota Wild. The thing is, his back flared up again. That's a very big concern for the Minnesota Wild going into the season.
Yeah. And then moving on, we got the Nashville Predators, the 2017 Western Conference champions. Last season, they were 41-29-12 with 94 points. They're fourth in the Central and made the playoffs as a wild card. Key additions for them was left winger Scott Hartnell and center Nick Bonino. Key departures was right winger James Neal and left winger Colin Wilson. Key notes for the Nashville Predators is after making it to the Stanley Cup Finals for the very first time in franchise history, despite expansion, the Nashville Predators were able to keep their team intact, especially on defense. The Predators will be a team to beat this season when everyone is healthy. And the biggest person that you have to ask is, when could Ryan Ellis be fully healthy and capable of playing for these Nashville Predators?
Yeah, that's a big question. He gave so much to that team, stepping up, making that core, as you said, as dominant a core in the playoffs last year, and that core 4 is what pushed them to the Stanley Cup Finals. Makes Pecorine and Jonas Saros' life a heck of a lot easier having those 4. Getting in Alexei Yemelin, who's a veteran, who can be a short-term stopgap in that top 4. Maybe an Irwin might step up. He played top 4 minutes in San Jose. It's about just staying the course in the regular season, making sure you're in the mix. Ellis comes back, a fresher Ellis, and you're going to see a lot of this with some of these other teams that we haven't covered yet. There's a lot of teams that have injury concerns that are going to stem well into the first couple months of the season. Ellis in Nashville, Marian Hossa back in Chicago, another one.
Well, Hossa isn't coming back. They've already ruled him out for the entire year.
Not this year, though.
Well, and that's a topic for when we get closer to the end of this season and going into next season. That will be a very interesting topic, because I think Chicago might have screwed the pooch on that one.
But Nashville, bringing in Scott Hartnell, bringing in Nick Bonino, it continues that continuity with the young players starting to continue on. They're getting their big contracts now. You saw Ryan Johansson get his big contract. Arvidsson got re-upped to a long-term deal. Forsberg's locked in for long-term. They got that good young core up front with that good veteran core in the back. Wouldn't be shocking if Nashville's right back in that mix when we come late May, early June.
Yep. And then, of course, Ryan Ellis, I believe he's at, 4 to 6 months. Ryan Johansson, should be back now on the ice along with Eric Fiala, who broke his fibula in the playoffs. So the Nashville Predators getting healthy on offense, but they definitely need Ryan Ellis back on D. And then moving on to the St. Louis Blues, who were 46-29-7 with 99 points, third in the Central Division. Key additions was center Braden Shen, right winger Bo Bennett, and right winger Chris Thorburn. Key departures was left winger David Perron, center Yuri Laterra, right winger Ryan Reeves, which was a very laughable reason for Pittsburgh, but we'll talk about that next week when we talk about the Penguins, and right winger Nail Yakupov. Key notes is after doing some retooling to the coaching staff, Mike Yeo is ready for his first full season as head coach of the St. Louis Blues, and the proof why he was chosen as Ken Hitchcock's successor. The Blues have had a very good core with a great addition, and now have a great addition in Braden Shen, who was the top guy on the Philadelphia Flyers power play.
I don't want to throw my cards out the table just yet. I know predictions will be coming in a couple weeks, but I love what the St. Louis Blues team looks like this year. Like you mentioned, bringing in a Braden Shen that can help around the net, and I mean, he tied for the league power play goals last year. This team was able to trade their best offensive point producing defenseman, Kevin Shattenkirk, and still have a core group of young defensemen around the captain, around Petrangelo, that's going to make the life almost miserable in the Central Division this year. And just looking at the roster, I mean, you have all these young kids that Barbashev is 21, Zach Sanford is 22, Yaskin 24. Sundquist, the guy they got for Ryan Reeves, has been trying to get into that Penguin lineup. He's going to get a chance to be a top nine, maybe that third line center. And Robbie Fabry, they're going to try at center now. He's coming off a knee injury, but he's been dynamic in his short term with the Blues. And then, oh, by the way, guys like Tarasenko and Jason Schwartz are 25 and 25. I mean, and then the blue line, Pareko 24, Edmonton 24, Petrangelo 27, and the guy that took a big step up last year, Jake Allen, is only 27. This team has got a chance to really make some waves in the Central this year, Mike.
Yep. And then moving on to the final team in the Central Division, the Winnipeg Jets, who are 40-35-7 with 87 points, fifth in the Central. Key additions were defenseman Dmitry Kulikov and goalie Steve Mason. Key departures was goalie Andrei Pavlik, defenseman Paul Postma, and right winger Chris Thorburn. This could be a telling season for the Winnipeg Jets. They are trying to foster a winning environment and improved 9 standing points last season. Can this be a trend that they can keep improving, or is it now time to move on from Paul Maurice, who just signed an extension, and get a new voice in the locker room? Personally, you know, when you look at how they, you know, and I use the Hockey News yearbook when I write up these previews, and one of the things I notice is the standing points. And for the Winnipeg Jets, their standing points is like it's good one season, then it goes down, then it goes up, then it goes down, then it goes up, then it goes down. Well, last season they went up. Could they go down, or could they actually stay consistent or move up? And that's the real big question. And the thing is that, you know, just like when we were talking about Joe Sakic with the Colorado Avalanche, you know, there does have to come a point when you got to say when, and say I'm sorry, but we can't use you anymore, and move on to a new set of eyes and a new voice.
Yeah, and like you said with Colorado previously, these two teams, Colorado and Winnipeg, have a true double-edged sword. Their own development, but also being in division with those other 5 teams we talked about that have been perennially being up and down in the playoff hunt, and having all the firepower offensively and defensively. Winnipeg, 2 years ago, they were in the top 10 in goals against. Last year, they were 4th worst at 255 goals against. Goaltending has been a big issue. They thought Andrei Pavlik was going to be the answer. Hellebuck is the middle to long-term answer, and Eric Comrie, who will be starting with the Moose this year, will be the long-term answer. Bringing in Steve Mason, giving him a chance to take the majority of the starts, but also Hellebuck's going to get his fair share of starts too. That's going to be where it is. They have guys on the blue line. They have your Buffaloes. You have your Hensters. You have your Tyler Myers. There's no question on the blue line. Offensively, getting a Patrick Laine, 36 goals last year. Bringing in possibly a Kyle Connor this year from the University of Michigan, who was a Hobie Baker finalist, to be able to maybe strengthen that middle even more. Like we mentioned earlier, Brian Little getting re-signed to a long-term deal, and you mentioned, I mean, Paul Maurice and Cheveldayoff both just got 4-year extensions. So they are in a window where the fan base ain't going to leave them. They're still going to be wild and crazy every night. It's going to be, I mean, sold out every night. but it's a matter of how they take that step and find a way to get into the playoff hunt, which probably is going to be going to be close, if not over 100 points to get into the Central Division.
Yeah. All right. So with that, we have wrapped up on the Central Division, and with that, we will be right back after this quick commercial break. Okay. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Experience Hockey Talk, serious hockey talk for serious hockey fans, where for some reason the wrong commercial break played. Okay, well, it's what happened. You know, I haven't worked the board in a while, and I hit break number 1, and it played break number 3. It happens. But real quick, we do want to do a quick shout out to the bands I Shine and Crimson Orchard for the music that you hear on the show. Crimson Orchard obviously doing our opening song, Human Chess, and I Shine for the songs Turn Off the Radio, Here We Are, and The Way That Stars Fall. Thank you so much, guys, for your music. We love it. Bernie, it is now time for the Pacific Division.
Yep, and we have a new addition that we'll be covering at the end of this segment to the division to make this league a beautiful round number of 31 teams. So I think we're going to be starting with a little quack, 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 I take it.
Oh, yeah, and speaking of quack, 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 don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, that you can email Donald at blake4av@aol.com for a chance to win 2 weekend passes to the CSA show next month, October 13th to October 15th, where you can meet 3 members of the Mighty Ducks movie crew: Brandon Quinn and Adams, who played Jesse Hall, Matt Doherty, who played Les Averman, and Vincent LaRusso, who played Adam Banks. And now going on to the real Anaheim Ducks. Last season, they were 46, 23, and 13 with 105 points, first in the Pacific Division. Key additions was goalie Ryan Miller, assistant coach Steve Konowalchuk, who replaces Paul McLean. Just a little throw that out there for the Caps fans. Key departures is defenseman Shea Theodore, defenseman Clayton Stoner, goalie Jonathan Bernier, and center Nate Thompson. After being eliminated in the conference finals by Nashville, Anaheim was fortunate to keep their core intact by trading defenseman Shea Theodore at the expansion draft. With some changes to the coaching staff, will the new voices hurt or help the Ducks?
Well, I mean, having that core, like you said, is going to help the transition. And having Randy Carlisle being a familiar voice behind the bench is only going to help that team develop into year 2 under Carlisle 2.0. I think a bigger loss is going to be Ryan Kessler, possibly this season with the hip injury. I don't know how they're going to replace that. Of course, one way they can replace that is for Corey Perry to rediscover his goal touch. Looking at the stats the other night, I thought 33 goals he scored, a minimum of 33 goals every season from the 2010-11 season. Until last year when he scored 19. Everyone talks about Alex Ovechkin when he goes from 50 to 32. For Corey Perry to go from 33 to 19, they're very fortunate. Guys like Rickard Rakell have stepped up and taken that next step into their 25, 30 goal seasons. But having Corey Perry stepping up and put the puck back in that is going to be a huge huge asset for a team that not only is going to be missing Ryan Kelford until about midseason, but also Sammy Vatanen until almost midseason. But having that depth where they only lost Shea Theodore to that blue line is miraculous, and be able to add motion in for some veteran help until Vatanen gets back.
Right. Yeah, and it'll be interesting how the Ducks respond. Obviously, the nickname of Corey Perry is Scory Perry for a reason. He will definitely have to step up this season to get back on track to what he normally is. And
I
then
think also, Mike, real quick before you jump on, having Patrick East for a whole season, he was dearly missed in that Nashville series when they only scored 2 power play goals in that series.
yeah, and that's a very true fact as well. Moving on to the Arizona Coyotes. Last season, they're 30, 42, and 10 with 70 points, 6 on the Pacific. Key additions is center Derek Stepan, defenseman Nicholas Halmerson, and goalie Antti Ranta. Key departures are goalie Mike Smith, center Alexander Remistrov, right winger Radim Verbata, and defenseman Connor Murphy. The key notes is that a new coach, Rick Tocchet, and the end of an era, Shane Doan, the Coyotes look to start anew after taking a severe step back in their progress. Could a move away from analytics and having a guy who's played the game and has been groomed as coach with 2 Stanley Cups turn the Coyotes around? Now, one big thing on this turn away from the analytics is also, hate to say it, but that kid who's younger than me as the general manager of the Arizona Coyotes, he needs to get away from the analytics, and he needs to go with what is actually happening on the ice and not relying solely on the analytics.
Absolutely. We talk about it time and time again. Yeah, the numbers are great, and numbers can add to what you're performing, but it's all about what goes on the ice, the hard work behind the scenes, what goes on in practice, what goes on, what's the makeup of these guys that you're bringing in, not just, oh, he shoots and keeps the puck at this amount of percentage. I want to know if he does step up like the Derek Stepan has for the New York Rangers at times, that pains me to say. I mean, guys like Chalmerson, who has Stanley Cup hardware. You mentioned Rick Tocchet, Stanley Cup hardware. You're bringing in some pedigree that knows how to win in this league. It's going to be weird not seeing number 19 on the ice wearing a Coyote jersey. I can't wait to see that number waving up in the rafters here very soon. I can see them pulling the trigger on that really quickly. But,
Well, don't forget, I believe...
young guys stepping up to the next level.
Well, keep in mind, I do believe that this upcoming season, you have Yuri Lettinen with Dallas having his number retired, and I believe Arizona is retiring a number. I don't...
That's a no-brainer.
No, but it's not Shane Doan. It's somebody else who had a long career with Phoenix/Arizona as well. I don't remember who, though. I have to look into it to make sure, because I did...
Maybe Kachuk, I don't know, but
yeah.
I know Milan Davis also had his jersey.
Yeah, that was just announced as well. Yeah.
It's going to be a year of jersey retirement. Maybe, who knows, after Phil Chenier news with the Wizards, maybe Cole Bonder finally get there too. But we'll see about that. We'll talk about that in future weeks. But with Arizona, it's all about youth. Max Domi, Duclair, Clayton Keller could be a number one forward that Rick Tocchet can lean upon. Christian Fisher's going to get his shot in the league. You got Dvorak still. You got Krause, Dylan Strome. You can have a young team and a veteran team on this team. But having a guy like Derek Stepan and Chalmers, like I said, and having Antti Ranta in the net, 3 guys with 1 Stanley Cup. Ronto's a backup role, but also Chalmerson in a leadership role, and Derek Stepan with his success in the World Juniors and everything like that, and as well as playoff success with the Rangers.
All right, and now it's time to do a couple back-to-back Alberta rivals, starting off with the Calgary Flames, who are 45, 33, and 4 with 94 points. They're 4th in the Pacific and made the playoffs as a wild card. Their key additions is defenseman Travis Hamonic, goalie Mike Smith, and goalie Eddie Lack. Their key departures was defenseman Derek England, defenseman Ladislav Smeed, goalie Brian Elliott, and goalie Chad Johnson. The Calgary Flames had a great bounce-back season, but they will need both Johnny Gaudreau and Sean Monahan to get back to being the dominant players they were before inking their big contracts. Also for Calgary, will Mike Smith and Eddie Lack be the answer in net for the Flames?
Well, yeah, Mike Smith is a definite upgrade, both his veteran leadership. I mean, when he's had healthy guys in Arizona, he's shown he can put up the numbers. He made the All-Star team from Arizona. That tells you something. When they have to pick a guy from the All-Star for every team, Mike Smith's name's usually in that mix every year, whether his numbers are up or down. It's all about health with him, and it's also about health with Eddie Locke too. But bringing in Travis Hamonic with that group of defensemen already, is only going to make them even tougher to play against. And needless to say, the problem with Alberta could have a lot of hockey being played deep into the springtime this year. But like you mentioned, like Gaudreau and Monahan have to keep putting up their numbers, and Matthew Tkachuk needs to keep developing into that power forward that they see him being.
And it's funny, when you talk about Matthew Tkachuk, a lot of people say, things about Tom Wilson where he's just a goon, he's a talentless hockey player because, the hits that Tom Wilson froze. And, the same could be said about Matthew Tkachuk because Matthew Tkachuk, unlike Tom Wilson, actually had some disciplinary hearings last season. And that's something that Matthew Tkachuk needs to get away from. He needs to focus more on playing the game and less potentially being in a disciplinary hearing with the Department of Player Safety. So definitely a big thing right there for Tkachuk and the Flames.
Absolutely, that's going on with year 2 of the Gumpton regime there in Calgary, as well as year 2 with Matthew Tkachuk going to learn how to play more and more season development. Tom Wilson now being showing the offensive side as well as being able to control himself and see similar leaps and bounds by Matthew Tkachuk, especially with all power play time in the stays out of the box.
Yeah. And then moving on to their Alberta native rival, the Edmonton Oilers. Last season, they were 47-26-9 with 103 points and second in the Pacific. Key additions was left winger UC Jokinen and center Ryan Strome. Key departures was right winger Jordan Eberle, left winger Benoit Pouliot, defenseman Griffin Reinhart, and goalie Jonas Gustafsson. After getting Connor McDavid to play a full season, the Edmonton Oilers emerged as a legitimate playoff team. GM Peter Chiarelli and coach Todd McLellan have changed the culture in Edmonton, and the future looks very bright. And I also have to say, the trade between the Islanders and the Oilers, the Edmonton Oilers definitely won the trade of Ryan Strome and Jordan Eberle. Because Eberle, good hockey player, but I see Ryan Strome fitting in so much better in Edmonton than Jordan Eberle with the Islanders.
Well, you think Ryan Strome is younger, has a little more speed to his game. I mean, Eberle has better touch with his shooting and everything. That he's been in the league a little longer than Ryan Strome, who has a proven year for him. I think also counting on Puljujärvi coming up and being that Jari Kurri to McDavid's Gretzky almost, being that 1-2 punch. So they can allow Draisaitl to center his own line and have that 1-2 punch that they see when they sign him to all that bankload of money. Having Cam Talbot in net is going to be huge, but also finding someone to back up and take some. He stayed 73 games in the regular season last year. That's crazy that he's going to be able to do 70 again to be able to take this team to the next level in the playoffs. So Lauren Brossoit is currently the backup, but I can see them dipping their toe into the backup goalie pool when it gets closer to the season.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, you can't. And just like with the Capitals and Braden Holtby, I know Holtby loves playing all the games, but you got to get breaks, and you can't play all the games. And we'll talk about when we do our Caps preview in 2 weeks on September 30th. But this could be a season where we could potentially see Philip Grubauer playing 30 games this season. So. But moving on to the Los Angeles Kings, who were 39-35-8 with 86 points and fifth in the Pacific. Key additions was left winger Mike Camilleri, general manager Rob Blake, and coach John Stevens. Key departures was goalie Ben Bishop, defenseman Braden McNabb, general manager Dean Lombardi, and coach Daryl Sutter. Despite having a new regime in the front office, the Los Angeles Kings could be in for a long season. The past mistakes of now former GM Dean Lombardi are still very clear, but the real question is, how can new GM Rob Blake and his team turn things around and become Stanley Cup contenders once again? And the biggest mistakes is a lot of those long-term contracts. The Dustin Browns, the Marian Gabricks, he's still a good player, but Anze Kopitar is a very long contract. Drew Doughty only has 2 years left on his contract. And he could be going elsewhere if he doesn't like what he sees with the Los Angeles Kings in these next 2 seasons. So there's a lot of questions surrounding the Los Angeles Kings right now. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, being able to transition to John Stevens from Daryl Sutter, you still have a familiar voice behind the bench. The thing with LA is their AHL team, Manchester, I think, won the Calder Cup a couple years ago. They haven't seen the fruits of that like some of these other teams, like Ottawa seeing big Senators, all those young guys coming up and fitting in the roles up there. But LA's got to get back to what they do best, and it's going to help if Jonathan Quick can play more than 17 games this year. Having Quickie back there has masked a lot of deficiencies for years for the Kings, and to have him being out. Now, Peter Budaj did a great job in his absence, but still 500, a little over 500 wasn't going to cut it. And having Jonathan Quick back there puts a little seed of doubt in other team shooters' heads sometimes with some of the ridiculous saves he makes, but he's not getting any younger either. So, like you mentioned, a lot of contracts they have to figure out. Hopefully some of those, I don't know how long a couple of those, if they end at the same time Dowdy comes up, but they better hope a couple of them come up or they are able to move some of that, because Drew Dowdy can't leave LA unless they're looking for a major rebuild in the future years.
Well, the biggest thing is that, like, nobody's going to touch Dustin Brown's contract.
No.
And I think he's got, like, 4 years left on that contract. Like, 4 or 5 years. So, like, that's a contract that's not going to move, especially with the cap hit that Dustin Brown has. Yeah. So, it will be very interesting to see what the Kings do. It'll be interesting to see how the Kings perform this season as well.
Hopefully Brooks Light will hook on there. I mean, the guy that played a lot in the NHL, he could be the key for the LA Kings in that bottom six. The guy is not going to cost you much. He's looking for redemption in his own right. That might be a sleeper guy that might make a difference for the Kings, both in the locker room and on the ice. Yeah,
and of course, obviously, we definitely wish Brooks like all the best on that as well.
Amen.
Even if it's not with LA, with another team.
Yeah.
And then moving on, we got the San Jose Sharks, who are 46, 29, and 7 with 99 points, third in the Pacific. They had no key additions. Key departures was left winger Patrick Marleau, left winger Michael Haley, and defenseman David Schlemko. For the San Jose Sharks, they made no changes at all to their lineup, with the exception of parting ways with lifetime Shark Patrick Marleau. Was this the right call to not add any new pieces, or is it finally time for the Sharks to move away from Doug Wilson and get new eyes on this team? You know very well, everyone knows very well, when they re-signed Joe Thornton, I said it was a mistake. I still believe it's a mistake. It is time that they have tried so hard to win with this team, and they can't do it. They need to. They moved away from Patrick Marleau, which was a wise decision. I don't like the fact that Toronto signed him, although if they use him in a certain way, I can accept it. It's time for Joe Thornton to leave San Jose. You know, Doug Wilson's been there forever in San Jose, and it's time to get new eyes in there. And
well, yeah, I mean, you look at the Thornton deal, it's a one-year deal, so if they struggle, that's going to be a very enticing piece at the trade deadline for a team looking for that one last piece, guy that is looking for that Stanley Cup. I think what San Jose is doing is they're hoping these young guys. I mean, they put a lot of money into Brett Burns and Edward Vlasic in the last year and a half. I mean, they're both their 8-year deals kick in this year. You're looking at a lot of these young guys have to step up. Timo Meyer, Thomas Hertel, Weisberg. I mean, some of those guys have to take another step to complement these things, because it's going to, as weird as we said that the 19 not being in Arizona, it's going to be even weirder seeing not just not seeing number 12 in San Jose, but him wearing that in Toronto. That's a guy who led teal and black and white for the last 2 decades.
Yeah. And then moving on to Vancouver Canucks, you have a team last season who was 30, 43, and 9 with 69 points, 7th in the Pacific Division. Key additions was center Alexander Burmistrov, left winger Thomas Vanek, right winger Sam Gagne, and defenseman Michael Delzato. Key departures was goalie Ryan Miller, defenseman Lucas Spiza, defenseman Philip Larson, and center Drew Shore. He notes the rebuild has finally begun in Vancouver, albeit a little too late. New coach Travis Green has promised to play and develop the young kids, but what does Vancouver do with the aging Sedin twins who are near the end of their careers? This will be a very long season in Vancouver, and eventually soon we'll be getting our friend George Fasikis from Nova Caps on, because he is a Vancouver Canucks fan. He follows them very closely. It'll be very interesting to hear what he has to say later on when we get him on the show some weeks down the line.
And I mean, I touched base real quick about the Vanek. When the Vanek thing happened, he didn't like the Vanek move, but he liked the other moves that the Canucks have been making. Of course, like you said, we'll get him on to get more further analysis on that.
Oh, I didn't like the Vanek signing either.
No, yeah. But you look at a couple of years ago, Mike, what was one position you didn't have to worry about in Vancouver? Goaltender.
Yeah.
You had Ryan Miller, you had Corey Schneider. Now you have UC Martin. I mean, you don't know who your goaltender is going to be.
Jacob Markstrom.
Ryan Miller's gone. If that goaltending isn't up to snuff, you're picking number one next year, or at least you have the best chance in the lottery.
Well, let's ask the Colorado Avalanche and the Buffalo Sabres about that the last couple seasons.
Exactly. Not a guarantee you're getting the number one overall pick, but the last 5 seasons, Vancouver's had the 30th rated power play. How do you have the 30th rated power play over a 5-year string with the Sedin twins on your power play?
Because the Sedins are not the same Sedins that we remember from days past. Their games legitimately started slipping about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And, they should have tried to get away from the Sedins a few years ago, in all honesty. But they're not going to because of loyalty, which is good. It's good to have loyalty, but at a certain point, just like with the Capitals traded Brooks Laich, you got to say when.
Yeah. I mean, you see Brock Besser, you're going to see Bo Horvat he's taking his game to another level. He's trying to become that face of the team. It's all about young guys stepping in and making an impact. And like I said, George probably knows better than both of us about what Vancouver's got up their sleeve with their young guys. Travis Green's going to be able to help that coming from Utica. We'll see. I mean, that's going to be might be a long season in the Pacific Northwest unless some of those young guys step up into major roles.
All right, and then coming up is our newest team, the Vegas Golden Knights. Last season, they announced their name.
They get 0-0-0 with a 0.0 goals against average.
What are their key additions? Everybody! And then their key departures is not available because they didn't really. I mean, you can't really classify somebody that they picked up and never played for them as a key departure. Yeah. But keynotes coming into the league in a city many consider a non-hockey market. This is the time to see how Vegas truly embraces the game of hockey. The pieces are in place. Marc-Andre Fleury, James Neal, Cody Eakin, Nate Schmidt, Gerard Gallant behind the bench, George McPhee as the general manager. The pieces are in place. Now does Vegas truly embrace the sport?
Well, from the early indications, that place, I heard the practice facility the first 2 days has been jammed, packed. You get to know your neighbor and your neighbor's neighbor's aftershaves. That's how tightly packed I hear that place has been. They are jazzed up for this thing. Tomorrow night they start their preseason schedule on the NHL Network against the Canucks, pardon me. But it's a lot of fever. I think one thing that George McPhee has to do before that puck drops for real in the regular season, they have 11 defensemen on the contract still. All those defensemen they picked in the expansion draft, 10 of those 11 are on one-way deals. So they're going to lose a couple guys through waivers unless they make some more deals. And of course, the only one that's a two-way contract is Shea Theodore, who could be their best young defenseman of all the bunch.
Yeah, and I was looking at the depth chart, and they have Nate Schmidt as like number 6 on the depth chart. I'm like, man, I would probably bump Nate Schmidt up above a couple other guys because of what that kid's going to be bringing to the team. And apparently, he joked that in his contract, one of the biggest things that he loved was that he signed the contract solely for the white gloves.
Yeah, well, the hair he had when he had a little video he sent back to all the Washington fans. He had a very unique haircut, but he's fitting in quite nicely in Vegas. But It's going to be a work in progress. Bringing in Shipper Shop from the KHL as well to supplement the James Neal, Eric Holland, some of the other guys that they have on there, Cody Eakin, David Perron. They have a bunch of guys that have had good seasons in the league. But it's all about John. The one big thing they have, and something that I think is the reason why they aren't going to be last in the division, is they have Marc-Andre Fleury in between the pipes.
Right.
They have a guy who showed again he ain't out past you just yet in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, and then real quick, Brian Farina mentioned on our TXHT Facebook Live, Seattle should have gotten a team, not Vegas. While I agree with you greatly on that, Brian, the problem is the arena, which this past week a deal in principle has been agreed upon for a new arena or a remodel of the Key West Arena in Seattle. Could it happen still? I hope so. I mean, if Vegas doesn't pan out the way that people think, Seattle then can become an option for relocation. So, same with Arizona. I mean, they just celebrated their 20th anniversary or 25th anniversary. So, 20th anniversary. So it's very, you still have those possibilities, but right now, let's just keep it mute and let's just give Vegas the chance. That's what we have to do as hockey fans. So.
Absolutely. Michael, I know I'll probably have to, if we're going to do a prediction of mine.
We don't do predictions on this show until we actually get to the playoffs.
Absolutely, but I'll say this for now. I'm going to head off. I'm going to plug out here. We're going to get to the point where we're about ready to start the walk with the indication of national anthem and everything. So I hope everyone has a great week. Thank you, Lionel Green, once again, for letting us do what we do best. And Michael, take us home, brother. The Western Conference looks very interesting this year.
All right, we got 10 minutes left, so real quick, I'm going to go to a commercial break, and when we come back, we are going to have a little, just a little talk.
More information and purchase tickets, visit derpycon.com. Attention hockey fans, the Experience Hockey Talk is on Patreon. TXHT community stand for access to exclusive episodes, interviews, and so much more. You can join the TXHT Patreon community at patreon.com/TXHT_hockey.
And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Experience Hockey Talk, serious hockey talk for serious hockey fans. Thanks, Bernie, for calling in. Normally you see Bernie here in studio with me, but he's doing a wonderful thing out in Frederick, Maryland for Down syndrome. But he will be back in studio next week. And real quick, I just want to take this little bit of time. We just did our Western Conference preview. Shaggy, I know you're loving the Kashina jersey that I'm wearing today. But, this past week, there was a big news thing that happened, and that was the IIHF, who does a lot of the international stuff for hockey. They announced that they will not be allowing any players under an NHL contract play in the Olympics this February, which I think is a wonderful thing. I am one of the people who is 100% against the NHL shutting down for the Olympics. It's the only sports league in the United States, North America, period, that shuts down their season for the Olympics. This season they will not, and I'm very happy about that. And just to further some perspective, Major League Soccer does not even shut down their league for the Olympics or the FIFA World Cup of Soccer. The NBA does not shut down their season. They let their players play during the Summer Olympic Games, which actually makes sense because a lot of people play basketball during the summer, so that makes sense. And then, not only that, but Major League Baseball, when they did do baseball in the Olympics, never shut down their season so guys can go play in the Olympics. So the fact that the NHL has finally smartened up and has decided not to let their players go to the Olympics and shut down the league for 3.5 to almost a month, 3.5 weeks to almost a month, is a very, very smart decision in my opinion. And I know Alex Ovechkin is very upset. He's claiming that the NHL has done it wrong and all this other stuff. You know what? use that anger. Use that anger and put it towards winning a Stanley Cup. Don't worry about the Olympics. I know everybody wants to win gold medal, stuff like that. But honestly, Alex, and I'm talking to you straight over on this one. I'm looking right in the cameras, because there's 2 cameras on me right now. And I'm saying this right now. You need a Stanley Cup. Because everyone, that whole comparison of Ovi versus Crosby, it's a dead. Because you can't win a cup. Crosby has 3. He's won back-to-back cups and could potentially win a 3rd straight cup this year. We'll talk about that next week when we do our Eastern Conference preview. And that's a fact. Focus on the Caps. Focus on the people who pay you to play the game. And then once you win your cup here with the Washington Capitals, if it does happen, then you can worry about winning gold medal for Russia when that time comes again. But this is not the season to worry about it. And I'm saying that as a hockey fan who has never been a fan of the Olympic break in the NHL. You know, and I brought this up several times. It's like, look at John Tavares and the New York Islanders a couple Olympics ago. The Islanders easily should have been in the playoffs that season. But because they did the Olympic break, John Tavares blew out his knee and was done for the season and playoffs. And because of that, the Islanders could not recover. And they missed the playoffs as a result. I don't want to see that for any team in the NHL, even a rival like the Pittsburgh Penguins. So please, forget about the Olympics. Focus on this season. Training camp just started yesterday officially. Let's focus on the Caps. Let's focus on the 2017-18 NHL season and the potential of winning a Stanley Cup this season. And that's my rant, because I had to get that off my chest. So focus on this season. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I am also happy to say, please stay tuned to the Experience Hockey Talk Facebook page today at 1:45 p.m. because we will be back live again as we will be doing the TXHT Fantasy Hockey League Draft Live. We'll be doing the draft at 2 p.m. I'll be joined by members of the TXHT Fantasy Hockey League on Skype, so you'll be able to hear them in as we talk about the draft and other things in the world of hockey. We got myself as Team TXHT, Dixon as Balor Club, Sean as Team Glorious, Shaggy as Bullet Club, Russell as Evolution, Marco as Team Destino, Brendan as Sticks Up for Harambe, and Michael from Nova Caps as Michael's Neat Team, and of course Russell as always from Full Tilt New York Rangers blog. And ladies and gentlemen, also next week is the Russian Machine Never Breaks Floor Hockey Tournament. Team TXHT has been finalized. It is me as captain playing, along with goaltender Roderick Cruz, our female players Megan Noyes, Kristen Murphy, and Aaron Smith. And our other players are Scott Fairchild, Christopher Vasilis, Derek O'Halloran, Alex Darwin, Patrick Noyes, and John Chick. All of our games next Saturday from 3 to 9 p.m. will be broadcasted live on the TXHT Facebook page via Facebook Live. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget that you can win 2 weekend passes to the CSA show on October 13th through 15th. Email Donald at blake4av@aol.com for a chance to win 2 weekend passes. You have the ability to see Brandon Quinton Adams, who played Jesse Hall, Matt Daugherty, who played Les Averman, and Vincent LaRusso, who played Adam Banks in the Mighty Ducks movies. And then Sunday only, you'll have Alex Ovechkin, Marcel Dion, Brian Trottier, and Ed Jacomen. And as always, we are on Patreon. Next month, we start up our exclusive content on Patreon, so go to patreon.com/TXHT_hockey and join the Patreon community today. And ladies and gentlemen, with that, I bid you adieu. And until 1:45 p.m. when we go live with the Fantasy Draft, we will see you on the ice.